welcome to the Actual Tech Media EcoCast. My name is Jess, and I am excited to be here with you all today. But before we jump into our content, I have some basic information that I want to cover with you. All right, let's kick off our day here today by taking a quick tour of your audience console. And we're going to start with the questions window. So if you haven't already said hi, there is a whole audience of cool humans out there, so reach out and give a wave to the other members of the Actual Tech Media community. Now, keep in mind that if you do have any technical issues today, a browser refresh is going to fix just about anything. But if those tech gremlins are clinging on today, no problem. Just throw a comment in the question section and our crew will be there to help. We also want this to be an informative webinar for you, so throughout today's EcoCast, we hope you'll get engaged and ask all your burning questions. Not only will we have team members responding to you over a live chat, we will also have a dedicated Q&A session at the end of our presentations. Now, if we don't get to your question during the live webinar today, don't worry, because the awesome experts that we have here with us will be following up after we wrap. All right, next up, there's going to be lots of cool aha moments on the EcoCast today. And if you want to share those with your community, we've made it nice and easy for you. You can use the Twitter button right there in your audience console, and the hashtag for today's EcoCast will be automatically added to your post. All right, our last stop on this guided tour, be sure to check out the handouts tab for some awesome resources and takeaways from our speakers here today. We have an info pack collection, solution briefs, white papers, data sheets, free trials, ebooks, upcoming webinars, and more. So many great resources, so be sure to go explore. Now, if that wasn't enough fun, we also have some exciting prizes that we'll be giving away throughout today's EcoCast. I'm going to tell you a bit more about those later on, but a few quick reminders for you all. First, you do need to be here live in attendance at the EcoCast in order to qualify to win a prize, and we will follow up with all of you after we wrap. Now, all winners must submit an IRS Form W-9 to Actual Tech Media, and all winners must meet the Actual Tech Media prize terms and conditions. Now, if you don't know what those full T's and C's are, that's fine. We've got the full thing for you. Just head on over to that handouts tab, click in, scroll down to the bottom, and you'll find them waiting for you there. Now, the absolute most important thing to remember is that we love getting all your insightful questions during these live webinars. In fact, we love it so much that we actually have a special additional prize for all you inquisitive folks out there. So in today's EcoCast, we will be giving away a prize for the best question asked in each of our live sessions. Now, the expert speakers and teams will review all questions asked after we wrap the webinar, which means that even if your question does not get read out in a live session, there is still a chance to win. If you are a lucky winner here today and you would like to donate the value of your prize, we have several wonderful organizations that we partner with. So let us know when we follow up about your big win, and we'll get that rolling for you. Again, we are so happy to have you all here with us live at the EcoCast today, and we want to keep that good feeling going, so let's connect on social media. Reach out and connect with Actual Tech Media on Twitter and on LinkedIn. We have lots of great content, and we always want to hear from you. Now, if you're looking for more awesome content and resources right after we wrap the EcoCast today, be sure to subscribe to the Actual Tech Media channel on YouTube. Another fun way to win a prize and, hey, grow this awesome community is to refer an industry friend or a coworker to the Actual Tech Media webinar series. Now, you'll find a link to do that right in your handouts tab, and you will also be automatically redirected at the end of the webinar. And both you and your coworker or friend could win a prize, and we hold those drawings every month. So be sure to refer a friend, because it could quite literally be a win-win situation. Next, we have a cool opportunity for all the decision makers out there to get connected with new and emerging tech and innovative vendors. Here's how it works. All you need to do is click on the link in your handouts tab, fill out a quick application, and the Actual Tech crew will then match you with some vendors that we think you should probably be chatting with based on your needs. There will also be fun opportunities that you get to choose to join in, like surveys, test runs, new solutions, extended demos, and so on. You'll get some chances to win extra prizes, you'll chat with great people, and you'll learn about the hottest new trends in tech. So be sure to apply, or hey, send that link to a decision maker on your team. Now, I want to take a quick minute here to remind you all about one of my favorite resources, and that is ransomware.org. You can find out everything you need to know about ransomware, how to prepare, prevent, and recover. This site is jam-packed with information, helpful tips, checklists, strategic approaches, case studies, everything you need in one place. So wherever you are in your ransomware preparedness journey, there is something for you at ransomware.org. Go check it out and start exploring. All right, I have one more exciting resource I have to tell you about today, and that is the Gorilla Guide Book Club. It's going to give you access to free enterprise IT books authored by top industry experts, so you can stay up to date on trending enterprise technology. And yes, these books will work on your Kindle, your mobile device, and as I said, they are completely free. You can download these awesome resources at gorilla.guide, and there's a link for you in that handouts tab as well. All right, well, we have covered a lot of important things already, and I don't know about you all, but I am excited to dive in. So let's get going. All right, folks, it is time to jump into all the good stuff here today because we are talking about securing, backing up, and optimizing Kubernetes. So today we're going to tackle everything from the progression and rise of containers in Kubernetes, as well as the opportunities and the challenges that some of you are facing. So whether you are just starting to explore Kubernetes or you're a Kubespert, Kuber Ninja, whatever level you're at, we've got something interesting planned for you. And the good news does not stop there because today we will be joined by some top experts from Rubrik and Kasten by Veeam who will help guide us through this interesting conversation. I cannot wait to jump in, so let's get this show on the road. I'm going to reintroduce myself here. My name again, Jess Steinbach. I'm a moderator here at Actual Tech Media. I am joined today by my fellow moderator, Keith Ward, who's waiting in the wings with a fun keynote chat, as well as Scott Becker, who is here with us today on live chat. All right, and last but not least, I know what you're all waiting for. Let's talk about prizes. Today on the EcoCast, you could win one of three $300 Amazon gift cards. We will be giving those away to 3 lucky winners who are here live and present with us at the EcoCast. Now, I mentioned this in the housekeeping chat this morning. You can find the full T's and C's linked in the handouts tab. So if you've got any questions, you can check them out there. All right, well, let's get things rolling. Up next, I am so excited to introduce our keynote speaker and obviously a familiar face here. I am very happy I get to start my day out today talking with the one and only Keith Ward, my fellow moderator here at Actual Tech Media. So let's get the wonderful Keith on out here with me. Give me 1 second here. All right, well, hey, Keith, and welcome to what we've decided to call Coffee and Kubernetes with Keith.
That's right. Very alliterative. I like a lot of alliteration, in fact.
I'm a big fan of alliteration and also a big fan of coffee. So Keith and I are going to have some coffee. Cheers to you.
I've got my big mug with my life motto on it, death before decaf.
I have T-Rex.
So there you go. Yeah.
All right. Well, we are here today not to talk about our coffee mugs, although...
Unfortunately.
Yes, exactly. That's a future keynote.
Yeah, that's right.
But we are going to dig in a little bit to Kubernetes. And Keith, you and I were chit-chatting and kind of prepping for what we wanted to talk about today. And I hadn't realized, the sort of personal history that you have with virtualization and with Kubernetes. And I was wondering if you wouldn't mind kind of sharing some of that story with our audience here.
Yeah, absolutely, Jess. So back in around 2006, my boss called me and said, hey, Keith, what do you know about this trend in IT called virtualization? And I said, absolutely nothing at all. I knew that there was some product by some little company called VMware that helped you run Windows on your Mac, desktop. That was about my extent of virtualization knowledge. This was at the time when virtualization wasn't a big thing, when you basically had the one application per one server paradigm. That's what it was then. So we founded a magazine, the very first in the space covering virtualization. And it was called Virtualization Review, and I was the founding editor. So I started learning about virtualization early on. And pretty soon after it came on the scene, virtualization changed everything, Jess. I mean, everything. Because it was no longer a one app on one server, model. You could have multiple apps on a server. This would save a ton of space, fewer servers, right? If you had 10 apps on a server. You could better use a server's resources. back in this day that if a server was just running, say, a web app and the web, and that particular website wasn't heavily traveled, the server would sit idle most of the time, using up resources, using space and energy, but not really doing very much. So servers were woefully underutilized. It was extremely wasteful was the situation back then. So virtualization allowed you to put a lot of applications potentially on one server, making much better use of your resources, far fewer servers, which would mean far less data center footprint, a far smaller data center footprint, far less cooling, great cost savings all across the board. So virtualization was huge and totally changed the game. It's one of those buzzwords you hear about in IT, but it really did. Now we have moved on. Virtual machines still are very popular in environments, but they're not the best fit for a lot of modern environments because their footprint is really heavy. So for instance, when you run a virtual machine, you run the entire OS inside of this virtual machine, and you run the entire application inside the virtual machine. That's a lot of data in there, so it's very heavy, as we say. It doesn't work well when you're talking about cloud speeds, cloud types of development, those sorts of things. So they're big, they're ponderous, and they just are not the best solution in most cases. So fast forward to today, we've got containers. Now, containers are essentially lightweight versions of virtual machines. They only have the little bits of stuff they need to do one little bitty job for an application. Okay, when they do that, they can often be destroyed. Then you create a new one. But the point is that they're easily created and destroyed. And there's tons of containers that are created for a typical cloud-based app. Things are happening all the time. It's a very dynamic environment, the container environment. So what do they need? They need a manager. That brings us to Kubernetes. So Kubernetes is a platform that orchestrates these containers. It tracks their life cycles. It makes sure things run smoothly. It makes sure the apps have the resources they need, etc. So that means that we need to make Kubernetes run well. Okay, that's also essential. So we keep moving up the ladder. And that, Jess, is what we're talking about today on this event, isn't it?
It is. And because this is such a big topic, as you just kind of walked us a brief history of Kubernetes with Keith Ward, I think this is our coffee and Kubernetes chat.
You're talking now, so I can drink, right?
That's right. We're trading off. Yes. Otherwise the coffee gets cold.
Right.
These are obviously big ideas, big topics. So we're going to zoom in on sort of three pieces today. So we're going to talk about backing up. We're going to talk about securing, and we're going to talk about optimizing. And I'm really excited about that last one. And I think those are kind of the main areas that we'll dig into.
Absolutely. Well, let's start with security,
okay.
Because this is, no less important than any of the others. You could make the case it's the most important aspect of it. There's so much out there. Your data is everywhere. And there's so many more ways to attack applications than there used to be when they were in the walled garden of the data center. So what we're hearing a lot about and what's being implemented these days is the zero trust model. Mm-hmm. This is the starting place that most companies should be at going on from there. Ronald Reagan famously said way back when, but I'm old enough to remember, he said, trust but verify. Well, zero trust flips that paradigm on its head. You start out not trusting. Don't trust anyone. Then you verify. Then if they pass that test, they can enter your network. But start out assuming they're the bad guys, assuming they have malicious intent, not assuming they're okay until they prove otherwise. So here are some, just a couple of real high-level points for starting with Kubernetes security. First of all, think about restricting network access. So for Kubernetes, it's crucial that only the necessary systems and services can access your cluster. So to ensure this, you've got to restrict network access to limit how many systems or users can access the cluster. So that means identifying first what systems or users need access to your cluster, and then setting up appropriate authentication for them. This could include something like a third-party identity provider like Auth0 or Active Directory. It could also mean setting up service accounts for each system that needs access. All right, once you've established which systems need access, the next step is to configure then an appropriate network security policy. This includes setting up firewalls, other infrastructure monitoring tools to detect suspicious activity, blocking malicious actors from accessing your system. Okay, so that's the first thing. Next thing, we're only going to go over two because we don't have all day to do this, although we could take all day. Role-based access control, or RBAC, or whatever, however you want to say the acronym. So this is one of the most important Kubernetes security best practices. RBAC is a built-in feature of the Kubernetes API server and provides a way to control user access to various resources within a cluster. So it allows you to do things like define roles, assign users or service accounts to those roles, grant them permission to take certain actions on specific resources. So when RBAC is configured properly, it can help prevent users from accessing resources that they don't need access to, right? The reverse Reagan, if we want to call it, right? Don't trust, verify. It can also allow administrators to granularly manage access for different teams. It can ensure that users are only able to take the actions allowed by their role, right? Role-based. And it also makes it easier to audit user permissions. So to help ensure proper security in your cluster, make sure you're using RBAC and that you're regularly reviewing existing roles and access levels. They change with your users. They move in and out of different positions. When that happens, you need to be constantly updating. So that covers security. Okay. One down. All right, let's go to backup, Jess.
All right.
Backup is something that everybody's thinking about, more important than ever. There's more data out there, right? This is not breaking news. It doesn't fall under that category. We know that there's a ton more data being created every second, so much more than there ever was. Backing up, securing, and optimizing is old as IT. Kubernetes is a different animal. It's the same backup ideas do not work for Kubernetes that work, again, for the old days when you had one monolithic application and you knew where everything was. It requires a different approach, a different mindset. So with Kubernetes, applications are deployed in multiple containers across nodes in a cluster. So backing up the application, along with data and storage volumes, requires a solution that takes into consideration all of the various Kubernetes objects and configuration data. There's a lot of it out there. So a typical Kubernetes application is made up of hundreds of components called services, pods, certificates, secrets, and a bunch of other stuff that we will not get into for the sake of keeping our audience awake today. So any Kubernetes backup solution, exactly, this is time, needs to be able to not only back up and restore data, but also to back up and restore all of these components, not just the data. So the solution has to automatically interact with the Kubernetes control plane via an API so that it not only discovers Kubernetes apps running on the cluster, but integrates with the underlying compute, network, and storage. So there's a lot more moving parts. It is much more fragmented, the environments nowadays. And Kubernetes doesn't make that any better. It makes it worse. So making sure that all those ducks are in a row is crucial here. All right, so storage we've gone over. Let's talk about what you were really looking forward to, Jess, optimization. All right, so optimizing applications for Kubernetes. Now, this is largely a matter of ensuring that the code uses its underlying resources, i.e. mostly CPU and memory, as efficiently as possible. Optimizing a Kubernetes environment means maximizing that efficiency, the balance of performance versus cost. You need to scale Kubernetes intelligently so the costs don't get out of hand. And you need to reach your business goals, right? So let's remember at all times that this is about helping the business succeed. This is not some sort of little nerd game that IT pros play. You know, exactly. I know, hard to believe, isn't it? But if the more you can serve the business needs, the more job security you will have, the better that business will run. So achieving those goals, just a couple of points here, needs a solid configuration of application and environmental parameters prior to deployment. You need to know what you're trying to achieve. You need to know what you can spend. You need to know, you need to have key performance indicators, KPIs, to be able to monitor properly and to know if you're achieving those goals. All right, you need continuous monitoring and adjustment post-deployment, because as we talked about previously, things change, especially in the dynamic environment of containers and Kubernetes. So important. So it's not just implement, deploy, forget. You can't do it anymore. You've got to constantly be looking at what you've got. Couple of generally accepted best practices for optimizing Kubernetes. Okay, add resources to existing worker nodes before you create new worker nodes. A lot of people consider this the most obvious way to improve Kubernetes performance. Add more worker nodes to the cluster. The more worker nodes you have, the more resources that are available to power those workloads. A side benefit is you get an availability boost because having more nodes reduces the chances of having so many of them fail that your workloads start failing. This, to use the technical jargon, bad, really bad if that happens, okay? The final point here is to use multiple master nodes. Now, the main reason to use these multiple masters is to achieve high availability. The more masters you have, the less likely it is that they'll all fail and bring your cluster down with them. As we said before, the technical term for that, Jess, is bad. Thank you. You've gotten it already. See how technical you are? Adding more masters also offers performance benefits, though, because it provides more hosting resources to the essential Kubernetes components like the scheduler and API server that are hosted on masters. Kubernetes uses the collective resources of all master nodes to power these components. All right, so I'm going to take another drink and wrap this up here.
Yeah, this is where, like, if we were on a morning talk show, this is where the music would start coming in and we'd like shuffle papers.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, exactly. This was a very brief, very high level overview of some Kubernetes considerations.
Yeah.
I think the big takeaway here for me, Jess, is that deploying Kubernetes can take a lot of planning, but the benefits you get on the back end are so substantial that they are far, far greater than the effort it takes to set up a real solid, efficient Kubernetes environment.
Well, I think that's a great takeaway. We've all learned a lot from this little chat this morning, Keith, and I'm really excited to roll into our sessions. And thanks for joining us here for Kubernetes and Coffee with Keith Ward.
It's my pleasure. Can't wait to do another one.
All right. Well, now that we all have some coffee, that we've all gotten some interesting information, we are awake, alert, alive, and enthusiastic, and it's time to answer some questions. So our question for you is, what is your time frame for adding new or updating existing IT solutions at your company? So are you thinking maybe a couple of months, maybe a lot more months, maybe many, many months, or you have no idea at all? And that is okay. If you are not sure what the timeline is, that just means you're in a research phase. You're just kind of figuring it out, and that's fine. So wherever you're at, click on the poll there, let us know, and just gives us an idea of where you're at in your research journey so that we can make sure that we're hitting you with the information you need when you need it. All right, well, while you're clicking on that poll, I'm going to give you a last second, and then we're going to move forward because it is time to start our EcoCast. And it is my pleasure to introduce you all to our first two expert presenters here on the EcoCast. We are definitely starting out on a high note because, as you can see, we have two awesome experts here with us from the Rubrik crew, and that is Christina Avranova, Principal Product Marketing Manager, and Ben Meadowcroft, Director of Product Management, both at Rubrik. Christina and Ben, thank you both for being here with us to get us started today. I know you have some great stuff planned for the audience, including a demo. I'm very excited to see. Can't wait to jump in. So on that note, let's get things rolling. Christina, take it away.
My name is Christina Avranova, and I'm on the product marketing team. And together with me is Ben Meadowcroft, Director of Product Management. Today, we're going to talk about the rise of the containers and how do you protect containers. We will wrap it up by introducing data management for Kubernetes. Exciting, isn't it? So let's dive in. Once upon a time, a developer will finish writing the code and then throw it over the wall for IT to manage. So when the 3 a.m. call came, It was IT who had to deal with the issue. And when the inevitable "what happened" question got asked, all the developer would say is, well, it works on my machine. And that doesn't happen that much anymore, right? We wish. And let's just say it happens a little less. The technology growth over the past few decades has been so big that even Moore's law couldn't keep up. The ability to deliver new products and services as a differentiator, or for some to simply stay in the game, has put pressure on businesses to modernize, transform, and innovate. We saw the rise of the agile methodology, DevOps practices, application proliferation, which in turn drove new infrastructure choices, all in the quest to meet customer expectations and increase operational efficiency. We saw the industry evolve from the monolith applications, then the virtualization of hardware. Then we saw the rise of the cloud. And as team began to take advantage of those new technologies, application deployment crossed the traditional boundaries. But the application behavior was different from one environment than another. And the problem, well, it worked on my machine, became much more frequent and much more obvious. So then came the containers. And containers gave developers just the right agility, along with the ability to create predictable environments, so now applications can easily be shuttled between environments, but the software will continue to run reliably. And while the containers were godsend for developers, they became a nightmare for IT to manage. Enter Kubernetes, an open source container platform which quickly became the de facto standard for managing containers. Kubernetes is a must-have and the only platform offered as a managed service by all the big public cloud vendors, AWS, Azure, GCP, DigitalOcean, IBM, and so on. With Kubernetes, applications can scale on demand. Deployment is quicker and more predictive. So now developers can roll more and more enhancements and new features to ultimately deliver on the organization goal and vision. Kubernetes delivers a desired state approach to orchestrating the application deployment. Namely, it defines what a system should look like in terms of storage, elasticity, resources, security. But I can hear what you're already thinking. Wait a minute, aren't containers supposed to be stateless? Aren't these new application patterns designed to be more ephemeral, not require persistence? Ben, isn't this the case?
Absolutely, Christina. This is one of the things that I've heard many times as we've been talking about Kubernetes with our customers. You know, a lot of the early impressions about Kubernetes and a lot of what it was focused on was really delivering, that for those ephemeral workloads, something that was not stateless. So why are we talking about containers and data protection now? Well, this is one of the things that we have seen change over the last few years as we've been discussing this with our customers. While containers were originally targeted for those stateless applications or the stateless portions of the applications, and you would see things like application methodologies like 12-factor applications that were really aligned with that view and saying, hey, the state should be external to this stateless portion of the application. That was really the sweet spot for containers initially. But what we've been seeing is that as people have been developing these new applications, these new workloads that we've been talking about, they're now really looking to get some of the same benefits that they got from orchestration of the containerized application with the database and the persistent tiers of the application as well. Those systems, they want to deploy those on containers as well to get some of those same benefits. And addressing that need, that requirement, is why we see things evolving in the Kubernetes space. Why we see things like stateful sets, persistent volumes, snapshots, and so on becoming part of Kubernetes now. And as you can imagine, as soon as we start putting persistent data into Kubernetes, we start putting that application data and having it managed by Kubernetes. Now we also have to think about how we protect and secure that data as well. So when we talk about that protection, how do we protect that? What does that mean? Well, this is where we really have to look at how data is present within the Kubernetes environment and what are some of those key pieces of data that do need protection applied to them. And this is in contrast to, as Christina was mentioning earlier, some of the monolithic patterns that we saw with applications. With the more containerized approach to application development, we see these components being split out. And so, things like persistent volumes, whereas if you were deploying onto a physical machine or onto a virtual machine, often the virtual machine, would contain the persistent data. It would have those VMDKs, those virtual disks, attached directly to the VM and be a constituent part of the VM, really be tied to the lifecycle of the virtual machine. As well as that virtual machine, that physical system, really being where the application was deployed and configured, as well as the application binaries being installed as well. And so everything was all lumped together. What containerization and what we see with the orchestration of containers with Kubernetes is really these concerns being separated out, and in a very much a cloud-like model where persistent data is separate from the running processes. Persistent volumes are now attached and detached from those workloads, and so persistent volumes is one of the key areas of data that we need to look at protecting with Kubernetes. This is where the application data lives. And then other things that we need to look at protecting as well include things like the application configuration, how it's defined, the running configuration of the application. And this is really important for us to be able to understand, how the application is deployed and how it's protected, what it consists of, and being able to back up those associated resources. And so with protection of Kubernetes, we really need to look at all of these different aspects of protection in concert as part of a protection solution. So that's why Christina and I are really excited to introduce to you, what Rubrik is doing for data management on Kubernetes, and talk a little bit about our upcoming release and some of the capabilities that we'll be delivering to help you better manage and protect your Kubernetes environment. Let's get started and dive in. So to give you a quick overview, there were a few key things that we were really focused on when it came to Rubrik's Kubernetes protection. A couple of the key things that we really wanted to ensure we delivered. And these were based on some really in-depth conversations with some of our key customers who were really looking for us to bring some of those key capabilities, those key benefits of Rubrik into the Kubernetes space. So the first one of these, as we were talking with our customers, what they really emphasized was that, they were really moving to Kubernetes, developing these new applications and replatforming applications, re-architecting them, really to get some of those benefits that Christina was talking about earlier. Improved agility, the ability to scale up, scale down, and really all of the orchestration goodness that comes with Kubernetes as part of that core platform. And when we have an application that's deployed onto such I would say elastic platform, something that scales down, really a solution that is job centric or is based on predefined schedules and things like that isn't really a great fit. And this is, one of the things that we saw, a key benefit of Rubrik being that policy driven approach that we've taken from day one with our SLA domains, the ability to specify those requirements for data protection and be able to apply them to your workloads. And we saw this being a great match for what we do with Kubernetes protection, because as the workloads scale and change, our dynamic policy-driven approach is really a great match for that. So this was really the foundation of what we are releasing in this upcoming release. The second thing, of course, was the ability to properly and consistently back up and restore the applications running on that Kubernetes environment. And this includes the ability to back up those applications, all of the associated resources with them, so that you're able to capture that consistent view of the application and be able to restore it back to the original location or somewhere else. But not just recovering the application, but one of the great benefits of Rubrik is the ability that we have to index that data and give you that global search capabilities and recovery options as well. So we're able to not just recover the application that you've protected within Kubernetes, but also individual persistent volumes or even specific files on those volumes as well. And then, of course, the full recovery of the application back to the original location or even to another cluster is a key part of the offering. And then for me, one of the things that was most important was to ensure that we brought those same capabilities around security to our Kubernetes protection. One of the things that we've really focused on from day one at Rubrik is that providing that secure platform, and particularly an immutable data platform. So as we bring the data from Kubernetes into the Rubrik control, we're able to do so on an immutable data management platform, where we're able to capture those point-in-time copies of the data and store them immutably, so that you retain access to them. They can't be corrupted or modified. So you always have that good point in time to be able to recover from, and ensure that you maintain availability of your data, despite what adversaries may throw at you. So, these were some of the really key things that we wanted to deliver in our upcoming release. The policy-driven approach, the full backup of the application, the persistent volume information, the configuration of the application, and the ability to recover individual files, folders, recover volumes, as well as recover entire applications, both back to the original location or to other Kubernetes clusters that you have configured within your environment. And then, of course, building this all on top of Rubrik's data management platform, giving all of those capabilities that our customers love around immutability and security, and bringing that to bear on this environment. So with that, let me dive into a little bit more detail and really show you what we're doing. So I'm going to go through a few demos for you now. And really, this is going to help understand how we go protect a Kubernetes application, how we perform the recoveries and so on, and give you a flavor for what we'll be delivering in our upcoming release. So first, I'll go through and show you how we go and protect applications. So the first thing that I'll note is that we're delivering our Kubernetes protection as part of our Polaris SaaS platform. So this comes with some really great benefits. One, we're able to bring this out as a SaaS offering, and so we're able to iterate and continue to improve this very rapidly. A second key benefit is that we have this global visibility of all of your applications, all of your Kubernetes clusters that you've connected to Polaris. And so here, this is our Kubernetes offering. We'll just go through here and we'll see this list. And what we're seeing now is all of the Kubernetes clusters that have been configured within the environment, the Polaris environment here. And I'm able to see all of these applications, all of these clusters, all of the counts of namespaces under them, as well as other information about where these clusters are located and how we're protecting them. And then as I go through, I'm able to assign SLA domains to these objects, whether I apply it to a cluster and have it inherited by all of the namespaces within the cluster, or being able to go down to an individual namespace and apply the SLA domain to a namespace, or even apply the SLA domain to a label and have that label then automatically provide protection to any namespaces that are associated with that label. So here we go through and click the Manage Protection, and then you'll see something that as a Rubrik user you'll be very familiar with, the ability to go and assign an SLA domain to the object that I'm protecting. So this is a policy-driven construct, and I'll go through and select the policy that I want to apply here. And then as I apply that policy, what will happen in the back end, that policy will be applied, and we'll begin protection of that workload in accordance with the SLA domain that you've applied. Now, one of the things that we can do to speed this process along, I'll just go and select this namespace that we've protected, and I can also do things like trigger an on-demand snapshot, for example, to go through and not just have backups that are proceeding according to our SLA domain schedule, but also trigger backups whenever I want to as well, based on the access that I have to this environment. And so really, as this goes through, once the backup is completed and we can track that within the system, I can come through and go and drill down into the namespace here, and I can see the calendar view that you'll be familiar with as well, and see the snapshot that we've just taken. So hopefully this shows you how we can very easily protect an application that's running on Kubernetes. We're able to apply an SLA domain directly to a namespace, or we can apply it to a cluster or to a label and have it be inherited by the associated namespaces. Okay, well, let's move on to the next demo. So we just talked about how we protect an application, and we've seen how we can do that on-demand snapshot, how we can then see that snapshot in the screen here. Now we'll talk about how we can recover the application itself. So what I'll do first, let's go and actually make a change to this application. Let's go delete some data. So let me go into my Kubernetes environment, and what I'll do, this application that we just protected has some persistent volume data. So this application, actually let's go and we'll open the application up. You can see it's a e-commerce application. We have some data. We have some various pieces that are being displayed here for sale. Different athletic wear and other equipment. And this is all backed by a MongoDB instance that's running on Kubernetes. And that portion of the application is backed by a persistent volume. So let's go find that persistent volume in Kubernetes, and we'll just go ahead and delete that. Okay, we can see that volume has been deleted. We can confirm that just by going back into the Kubernetes and listing out the resources and seeing that resource is no longer present, that persistent volume. So we've come in, there's been an issue, a volume's been lost. How do we go ahead and recover that? Well, as we go back to the Kubernetes environment, you'll recall that we had this ability to really drill down into the calendar view here. And you can see, we're looking at this namespace. We've got a bunch of information about the application that we've captured about this namespace, how much data it's using, the number of workloads and so on. And then here within the calendar view, we have the snapshots that we've created. So let's go down and we'll drill in and we'll see the list of snapshots that have been available. And here we can see, we've got this snapshot here that we did as an on-demand snapshot. Let's go ahead and see what we can do from a recovery perspective here. So first of all, we know the point in time that we want to recover to. And so, at this point, let's just, recover the application. Let's roll everything back. So we'll recover the entire namespace here. And this will help us to make sure that we recover the application back to this point in time that we had earlier. And we're going to recover in place, so we're going to recover back to the same cluster, to the same namespace that we protected. This is really enabling us to really roll back in place, including the persistent data. And so with that, we can see the cluster we're recovering to the namespace, and so we'll just go ahead and confirm this rollback here. And so as this recovery takes place, what we're able to do is really see this little pop-up here letting us know that the recovery is progressing. And now let's switch over to the Kubernetes environment. And within the Kubernetes console, we can see what's happening just by what's happening to the resources right now. And so now we can see that the application is fully recovered, the persistent volume, we can see that's now been made available again. So let's switch back over to the application and refresh the screen here. And we can see that, yes, the application is back and running again. All of those items that were available for sale are now restored back, and we're able to go ahead and make progress there. So hopefully this has given you a good sense of what we're delivering with our upcoming solution for data protection for Kubernetes. We have a lot of great things coming, including the ability to restore your entire application that are running on Kubernetes, the ability to restore your persistent volumes and your files, as well as the ability to restore not just in place, but also to other Kubernetes clusters as well. And just to reiterate the key things that I was mentioning earlier, this is all built on the core platform of Rubrik, and that includes Polaris, our SaaS platform, and so you have that global visibility across all of your Kubernetes environments worldwide. So the ability to have that visibility, to apply policies, apply protection, and perform recoveries, from a single location across your entire estate. And it's also built on our immutable and secure platform as well. So you can be assured that as you're protecting your data with Rubrik, those point-in-time copies of the data are secured against compromise. And so you always have that ability to perform the restoration in the event of a data loss. You have those point in times you can restore and get back up and running as quickly as possible in restoring that key application data. So thank you so much for your attendance today. And
all right. Well, thank you. What a great chat. And again, just an awesome way to kick off our EcoCast today. Really appreciate that, Christina and Ben, for the intro and the demo. I know that we all got a lot out of that, and there was a lot of questions coming in. We did decide to go a bit longer on the demo and a little bit short on our Q&A time today. So what we're going to do is make sure that all the questions that you asked are sent over to the Rubrik team. So you're going to get answers back about all of the questions that you asked. So keep those coming in, and we will make sure that you get some answers back. Now, in the meantime, there's a poll up on the screen here for you, and what we're wondering is, what is the time frame? Oh, excuse me. Boy, my brain just jumped all the way back to the start of the webinar. Now, what is the time frame? What is the additional information that you would like to get about the Rubrik solution? Temporal fold in my brain there. What is the additional information that you would like to get about the Rubrik solution? So there's all kinds of info that we just covered. Obviously, we got a great intro to some of these really cool features, and there's lots more to dig into, lots more to explore with Rubrik. So click on that poll right now and let the Rubrik team know how they can follow up with you once we've wrapped. Now, another great way to get information before you head out today is to make sure that you head on over to the handouts tab, click on that Rubrik link. Now, it's actually a Gorilla Guide, and I know that we have some Gorilla Guide book club fans out there with us today. So this is a Rubrik sponsored Express Edition Gorilla Guide. It is all about database protection and how the cloud has changed database backup recovery, as well as some challenges to be aware of. And really importantly, how to find the best solution for you and your organization. So click on that handout, grab that for later. I promise you're going to want to come back to that. And while you guys are clicking on the poll, clicking on the handout, exploring all those awesome materials, we are going to go ahead and give away a prize. So we have a $300 Amazon gift card going to one lucky attendee here with us live at the EcoCast, and that is Robert Jean of Colorado. Robert Jean of Colorado, you have won a $300 Amazon gift card, and we will be following up with you after we wrap to get you the information on that. And in the meantime, we are going to keep things rolling here, folks, because here we are. Now, today's EcoCast is short and sweet, but packs a punch. Here we are at our very last presenter, and it is going to be absolutely jam-packed with cool content and fun takeaways, I promise you. I am so excited to introduce you all to our very last speaker of the day, and that is Mike Carcerano. Mike, I'm having some trouble with the King's English today. Mike Carcerano, Principal Product Manager at Kasten by Veeam. Mike, thank you so much for being here with us today. Really looking forward to this presentation. I know that you've got a demo lined up for us. I know we want to leave some time for audience questions. So all kinds of good things coming our way here. Mike, the platform is all yours. Take it away.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you so much, Jess. And yeah, great to be here. So yeah, hey everybody. My name is Mike Carcerano again. I'm one of the product members, teams of the product team here at Kasten. So I am here today to talk a little bit about Kasten K10 and our approach to securing, backing up, and optimizing Kubernetes. So just getting situated. So first, we want to understand really kind of what is happening in the land of Kubernetes security, maybe cite some real world examples of why different forms of security should be in place as a day one operation. So Kubernetes as a platform kind of started with more stateless applications and stateless data, but is ever increasingly more incorporating stateful workloads such as databases. So persistence and scalability are things that are very important, but as more stateful data enters your environment, the likelihood of such data becoming target for attacks is also increasing. So malware is also more prevalently seen across Kubernetes clusters, where anonymous access can be discreetly gained, escalation of privileges can be used to deploy malicious workloads within a cluster, or used to discover resources available for compromising. So in the event of a disaster or a breach, minimizing the RTO or RPO objectives is crucial so bad actors can have less time for that capability. And also we want to ensure that at the same time we aren't allowing bad actors to perform attacks such as cryptojacking and exfiltration of data. So we're seeing more and more evidence of bad actors also targeting backups in a ransomware type scenario, so that would threaten data loss of brand image, and potentially confidentiality exposure. And even recently, there was an article published about CrowdStrike discovering a new form of cryptojacking within a Kubernetes environment. So attackers are innovating, and we need to remain ahead of the curve. So to quantify some of this, we have a small chart here from a cybersecurity firm Checkpoint to really highlight some of the financial impacts that some of these companies have listed here have had when they've been compromised. So when we look at some of the industries targeted, it may be perceived that the attackers are going after maybe small or medium-sized businesses, but we're actually seeing that there's no place too small or too large for an attack, and that payments can vary to the extent of what a company can deem an absorbable loss, in some cases greater than tens of millions of dollars. So as mentioned before, losses can occur in many ways, from lost income to due to unavailability, downtime from restore, and extortion from data leaks, and possible lost future business. So for these reasons, it's important to have a proper strategy around protecting your data. So backups are one piece of the puzzle and are only as good as your ability to restore them. You have encryption at rest and in flight, immutability, RBAC, auditing, and other security principles are need-to-haves. Containerization and Kubernetes have made our apps more portable than ever, but out of the box, it doesn't solve for really how, especially for stateful workloads, to get an app from Cloud A to Cloud B. So enabling things like hybrid Cloud DR, testing infrastructure upgrades, or avoiding lock-in across the board without compromising data governance can be imperative. So Kasten's primary goal is to tackle each one of these day 2 management challenges with a security enhanced lens to help you confidently run your production grade applications on Kubernetes and migrate them wherever needed. So having flexibility with your applications is extremely important, especially in a Kubernetes production deployment, and having that ability to reduce your recovery time objectives and recovery point objectives for critical applications is no less important. So as the leader in data protection for Kubernetes, how does Kasten make all of that a reality? So we'd like to break it down into these 4 pillars. So being Kubernetes native. So K10 is purpose-built Kubernetes native by default. We also embrace the notion of application centricity. So the notion of having automatic environment scans, discovering your applications, refreshing your environment on the fly. So protection status is monitored and updated. Operations are performed gracefully within any supported environment. Ecosystem support, we validate and support a massive ecosystem of distributions, managed services, storage, data services, and much more, but also while being easy to use. So whether you're a developer, a platform engineer, a storage or backup administrator, you have the power. And lastly, all operations being wrapped tightly with a vast array of security integrations and practices, including ransomware detection and protection, but also many more to be soon discussed. And so while Kubernetes provides high availability and scalability of application services, that doesn't necessarily extend to your data, which makes backup management of Kubernetes and applications a critical priority. So all of these things encapsulated with biweekly releases and updates to the K10 product every 2 weeks. As of this most recent release, we're proud to release K10 version 6.0, which is a major milestone for the product and probably is our biggest release yet. So Kasten's view on security is kind of having a multi-layered approach everywhere, or simply having the concept of security everywhere. So at time of build, there's constant image scanning and the pipelines that we run that are used to update to check against the latest databases for possible vulnerabilities. We have policy guardrails to help ensure that app admins can optimize their work streams by protecting their critical application data at time of deployment. More on this in a few slides. So at the time of deployment, we have several different authentication services we support and ransomware protection built in out of the box. We have S3 object lock support for most S3 defined backends, as well as Veeam's hardened backup repository. And at runtime, we provide an exhaustive RBAC system to regulate users to allow for least privilege access to production operations, and therefore limiting exposure. So since K10 natively also extends Kubernetes, we also extend the Kubernetes audit logs, which allow for K10 events to be visualized, such as a possible deletion of a backup, or in the K10 case, a restore point, and allows for K10 events to be monitored in threat detection services, such as Amazon Guard Duty and Red Hat Advanced Cluster Security. So we're not really considering that anything that mentioned in the previous slide was the end state for our security goals. So as we grow, we are looking to help find more ways for teams to be more connected to their applications and while being more secure from attackers. So for the various roles in a typical DevSecOps team structure, we have the cloud native application developers themselves looking to develop applications. So we have integrations with things like Kyverno and Open Policy Agent to help with the application at time of deployment in the form of policy as code. We have the operations team members looking after various applications, deployments, infrastructure, and dashboards like Grafana. And we might have a security operations center who will be ensuring the entire platform that the teams are using is securely designed and has limited exposure. And so that brings us where what we're introducing as a part of our most recent 6.0 launch, which are the threat detection integrations for SecOps teams to help manage the security posture of OpenShift clusters with Red Hat Advanced Cluster Security, and for Amazon or AWS EKS clusters with Amazon Guard Duty. And so it's worth noting that both solutions ingest the Kubernetes audit logs as a source, though in different fashion, which allow you to comprehensively highlight what is happening in your Kubernetes clusters where K10 is deployed and look for any suspicious activity. So now we'll momentarily focus on the Red Hat Advanced Cluster Security, which is quite of a tongue twister if you say it 10 times. But this is a tool that you can easily gain visibility of the entire cluster's deployments through its built-in policies. However, it's something that's deployed and managed within an OpenShift cluster itself, as opposed to Amazon Guard Duty, which is an add-on to EKS clusters managed by the AWS pane. So some of the policies include an anomalous activity policy, a crypto mining policy, vulnerability management, and package management. And so there are a few different components to its deployment, but it can act like a hub spoke model where you deploy a central instance of ACS and several other clusters connect to it for a multi-cluster type experience. And so through the ACS automated scans, it becomes easy to identify and remediate vulnerabilities against namespaces, images, deployments as a few examples, based on the determined level of risk associated, and protect the K10 environment from exposure for potential attacks. So shifting gears a little bit, so it's also important to note that K10 always natively encrypts your backups. So if there's a desire to use an external key management service for any sort of compliance reasons, we support HashiCorp Vault and AWS KMS. But ultimately, you can manage your keys and permissions separately for whatever level of access you need, and you have the ability to share encrypted resources between all of your accounts. And in a similar light to encryption, I want to touch upon the topic of immutability. As we know, backups are the last line of defense for recovery. So if you are targeted with a ransomware attack, you will need to accurately trust the integrity of your backup that you need to restore with. So immutability ensures that we cannot delete or modify those backup objects. And as a part of configuration with the backup policies within K10, we can specify whether we want backups to be immutable and how long we want those protected copies we want to be retained, as long as an S3 compatible object store is used for that supports object locking. So for Veeam backup and replication users, we also have support for Veeam's Linux-based hardened repositories. And so we shared how we protect against ransomware attacks through the immutability settings, and we configure on our target storage. But how do we detect such attacks as they're happening? So this is something that can be difficult to navigate through all the stages of potential attack, and sometimes attackers are looking to thwart and discover different surfaces to possibly expose. And so with the data integrity checker that we have built into K10, we ensure that not only the content is still present that you're expecting, maybe even if your K10 instance has already been nuked, but that it hasn't been modified unexpectedly. And because of how K10 extends Kubernetes, the actions that are being performed on a K10 instance are detectable in the Kubernetes audit logs. And so those audit logs can be ingested via several different security services for scanning, and we can process the potential malicious events through detection services like Falco, GuardDuty, Red Hat ACS, or other security information and event systems such as Datadog. So as with Kubernetes, the concept of ensuring that least privilege access is extremely vital to ensuring that the wrong users don't have the access to the wrong sets of actions within an application. So we have fine-tuned granularity to ensure that only admins of the highest privilege have these controls. For example, to delete a backup or perform a restore-only action, all this comes in right out of the box. So we made creating, assigning, and managing K10 roles and bindings simpler by integrating this functionality directly into the UI, but also can be used in a CLI format if desired. So combining our RBAC implementation alongside a variety of authentication integrations, we have a wide but robust approach to ensure that proper controls to users of the product. So we support OpenID Connect for modern SSO applications like Okta, bearer tokens, and direct integration with Red Hat OpenShift and AWS IAM, along with legacy LDAP for connecting Active Directory. And while RBAC is useful for controlling particular users from performing actions, it doesn't help with the enforcement of data protection objectives such as retentions, RPOs, or immutability itself. So this is why we have policy as code as a part of our data protection guardrail story. So what we're trying to do is control the potential for misconfiguration as we entrust privileged users to properly comply with organizational policies. So the potential that users misconfiguring any product due to any sort of human error is certainly plausible, and this aims to remove that. So the one fact we'd like to note around this that highlights over 80% of community provided modules for one of the most popular infrastructure as code platforms are considering data protection in account. And this is why K10 provides that holistic view across the board. So there are a few ways we can actually look at enforcing guardrails, which hopefully aim to not only protect, but optimize deployments in real time. So one way is using GitOps actions to manage these policies in a code-controlled repository to avoid said misconfiguration of policies at runtime. Because of this kind of consistency, along with the fact that we can check to-be-created resources against our policies, we have the ability to provide instantaneous feedback for our developers real time. And so this capability can be extended into an CI/CD pipeline as well, such as Jenkins. So the example on the right shows a particular scenario where we have a backup policy properly configured with the 3-2-1 rule that exports to an external location with a 7-year retention. So when this code is checked in, the test should pass in this scenario because it meets our organizational criteria. The second example below is a location profile that does not have immutability configured, which is an organizational requirement, and therefore would not be able to be checked in because the settings do not comply. So this way we minimize configurations and we ensure that we're complying with our organizational standards while remaining as efficient as possible. Another way we can leverage this functionality as a guardrail is through the use of by cloud ops or data protection specialists. It is common if we're deploying manually or even using something like Terraform. These guardrails work in real time using something called the admission controller, which is a native Kubernetes object. And so this helps for situations where attackers who have managed to get access to the node and want to start disrupting backup operations for a long-term ransomware attack cannot do so. So, for example, if an attacker wants to disable immutability on a location profile that we did configure immutability on, with this process, slowly just destroy backups over time, the organization can feel protected and ensure that it won't be possible using policy as code. And so now, very quickly, we have a demo to share around the admission control and Kyverno. Let's see. Basically what this demo is doing is using Kyverno to ensure the right behavior for a data protection specialist, for an ops team member. So we're looking to basically deploy an application in this scenario where we're looking for the right strings that match the data protection policy that we'd like to assign this application to. So we've shown an example of a misconfigured policy. And so if it doesn't have that valid label of data protection with the K10 in front of it, the label is none. And then the copy with the validated policy and data protection label that has the tag of valid gold policy. We check that code in, and that allows us to create a valid policy as shown in the UI here. And essentially, we are able to validate and configure our environments in such a way that policies are properly created when developers want to create applications, modify applications, and that way applications are protected from day one and not an afterthought. And so Kasten by Veeam features extensive support for ecosystem components across the entire application stack. So Kasten K10 supports user choice to pick the best tools or infrastructure for the job. So for data services, we support all leading applications such as Cassandra, MongoDB, Kafka, you name it. And then we also have Kubernetes distribution support that aligns to all types of vendors and distributions. So you have OpenShift Rancher and cloud vendors such as Google, Azure, etc. We also support all kinds of various cloud storage, such as AWS, Google, Azure, and on-prem storage, such as Dell EMC, NetApp, etc. And of course, we wouldn't feel complete unless we tied everything off with that multi-layered security approach that we have with the product, with policy as code, key management, and threat detection service integration. And so, the great thing is that you get your first 5 licenses free if you register using the code on the screen, or you can search for Kasten in any of your cloud marketplaces of your choice to get started. And with that, I want to say thank you all for taking the time to listen to me to speak today. It was great to speak with you all on such an important topic to us. And if there are any questions, I'll do my best to answer them.
Yeah, absolutely. We've got some great questions coming in, and I agree, a very important topic. Mike, thank you so much for such a great presentation. And you're our grand finale today, Mike. You really brought it home in style.
All right.
Yeah, I love that. And the presentation was great. Demo was great. It's always so fun to see a tool in action. So I appreciate you guys putting that together. We do have some questions that I want to jump into. Before we do that, I am going to move over to our poll here. And we're wondering from all of you out there in the audience is what additional information you would like to get about the Kasten by Veeam solution. So obviously we just got a really great intro with Mike, and we got to see it in action a little bit in the demo. But there's so much more to dig into. And obviously, you know, it may be a closer look, a personalized demo, or getting, you know, a technical white paper, or looking at some case studies. All of these things can kind of help you understand whether the solution is going to be a good fit for you. So if you click on the poll right now, it's like hitting that easy button, because what will happen is Kasten by Veeam will follow up with only and exactly the information that you're looking for. So click on that poll. While you're doing that, Mike and I are going to get into some of your questions. Mike, you ready to dive in?
Yeah, I think so. Let's do it.
Let's do it. Okay. I like this one because security, obviously top of mind for a lot of folks here. So how do we increase our security posture as a product and still promote K10 being self-service?
Yeah, great question. So yeah, Kasten K10 is Kubernetes native. Our APIs extend the Kubernetes APIs. As mentioned earlier, we have RBAC through either your choice of the UI or the CLI. You have layered guardrails on top of that, which reduces friction for developers that want to protect their own applications. And we have a really robust documentation set that helps explain any kind of questions that you might have with the product, and allows you to customize and configure K10 to your liking.
Okay, well, that ties in very nicely to this next question. Speaking of configuring things to our liking here, how is it that K10 is able to move applications between different clouds and clusters?
So we talked a little bit about application mobility in one of the earlier slides. So the way we do application mobility is through APs called transforms. So transforms are a multi-layered, multi-cloud approach. And so when you're passing in a transform in to a restore, let's say you want to back up you have a Rancher deployment on-prem and you have OpenShift running in Azure, and you want to migrate applications back to that OpenShift cluster in Azure. And let's say you want to migrate back to your on-prem Rancher cluster. All that is feasible. All that is possible through the possibility of transforms, which basically is a customized form to fill out that pertains particularly to the environment that you're restoring to and restoring back. So we have support for transforms that allows us to be extremely flexible, vendor and cloud agnostic, and provide the support and flexibility along the way.
I really like all things are possible with Kasten. That's what I'm taking away from this.
I do that.
If you can dream it, Kasten can make it happen is your key takeaway. What are your partner integrations with AWS? Oh, and Red Hat. Oh, interesting. Okay, so what are your partner integrations with AWS and Red Hat as far as security goes?
Yeah, so I talked a little bit about this in our slides. I covered Red Hat Advanced Cluster Security, which is that vulnerability threat detection service that is offered by Red Hat specifically to help monitor your workloads, but also and your clusters and namespaces. But similarly on Amazon Guard Duty as a part of the EKS management pane, we can look for suspicious activity, anonymous access through the various Guard Duty policies that are available. And so this is just the tip of the iceberg for us. I mean, we are looking to integrate with partners, but also different security services across the landscape to make sure that not only your backups are secure, but your infrastructure is also just as secure. So tying the front end to the back end and the full stack, that is our goal, and we don't try to compromise on that.
Perfect. Okay. Mike, honestly, there are quite a few questions that we're not going to get to today, and I wish we had a little bit more time, but I think we're going to have to leave it there. I do want to ask you, though, before you leave us, we have that little QR code up at the end, and obviously that's a great way to jump in. Is there any other way? Do you want me to? I can put that QR code back up. Everyone, click on the poll real quick. Click on the poll if you haven't clicked on it. 5, 3, 2, 1, and QR code. All right, so QR code is up. What else would you recommend as a first step?
Check out Kasten.io for any information. There's lots of demos from a lot of our very talented and brilliant team members here at Kasten. If you can imagine it, we can probably make it happen. So, if you have any other questions, there's a lot of information out there, or you can reach out to me directly. But yeah, that's pretty much that all I have to share about Kasten. And again, appreciate you having me here today. And it was a pleasure talking with everybody.
Yeah, Mike, thank you so much for being here. As I said, for being our grand finale. It's been a lot of fun, and I hope we'll get to chat with you again soon. Appreciate it.
Awesome. Thanks.
All right. And to everyone out there who clicked on a poll, thank you for participating. For those of you who asked questions, I love that. That's awesome. Keep in mind that you are entered to win that best question gift card from each session. Even if we don't get to your question live, we'll be reviewing all of the questions asked after we wrap, and we will follow up with those best question winners. So keep those questions coming in, folks. Speaking of winners, I'm going to give away a prize in just a moment here. But before I do, I want to remind you all to click on the handout and make sure you click on that Kasten by Veeam link. Grab their data sheet, Kasten 10, #1 Kubernetes data protection. This is such a great read. It's really well laid out. You know, I really like, I'm a bit of like an information design junkie. And I like the way that Kasten has this all laid out. It's very easy to follow, and you'll get all the information that you need without really having to dig through a bunch of text for it. It pulls out the key points really nicely. So make sure you've got that handout and make sure you take a look at that. Because that will help you jog your memory. As much as you want to believe you'll remember all of this after we wrap, you won't. So make sure you've got that handout to help you out. I promise you won't. You will thank yourself for that. All right. Well, I said prize and then I stepped back. So let's get back to our prizes. We are going to give away our last 2 $300 Amazon gift cards. Now, a quick reminder that you do need to be here live and present at the webinar in order to win. So our next lucky winner here with us is Levi Hafstead of Minnesota. Levi Hafstead of Minnesota. And our final winner of a $300 Amazon gift card today is Warren Schroeder of Iowa. Warren Schroeder of Iowa. So I will repeat that whole list for you all. That is Robert Jean of Colorado, Levi Hafstead of Minnesota, and Warren Schroeder of Iowa. As always, we will be in touch with all of you about claiming your prizes after we wrap. So stay tuned for that. Well, folks, I can't believe it, but I have to say we are here. We are at the end of our webinar already. I clearly needed to have more coffee with Keith this morning. But I hope you have all enjoyed the day with us today. And if you're having fun and you're thinking to yourself, I would like to be a part of this good time, well, we would like that too. So shoot us a message at connect@actualtechmedia.com and maybe think about presenting, bring your solution to a future summit, an EcoCast, a megacast, a webinar, a democast, a panelcast, whatever you have in mind. We would love to talk to you. So reach out, shoot us a message, and let's get that rolling. Okay, folks, well, here we are. And with that, on behalf of the Actual Tech Media team, I want to once again thank our wonderful speakers here with us today from Rubrik and from Cast and by Veeam for making this EcoCast possible. And on that note, as always, the biggest of thank yous going to all of you out there for attending, for asking some great questions. I really had a lot of fun talking with all of you today, starting with our coffee and Kubernetes with Keith, and then heading through into Rubrik and chatting with Cast and by Veeam. We got lots of demos today. We got lots of great questions. So a really fun and interactive conversation looking at Kubernetes and thinking about some innovative ways that you can build up, protect, and get the most out of your containerized environment. So I hope that you all enjoyed that. I hope that you've gotten some interesting ideas, some tips, maybe feeling a little more informed or equipped to tackle some of those changes that you've been thinking about at your organization or improvements. And best of all, I hope you just enjoyed the morning, the afternoon, whatever time of day it is for you. I hope it was a good one. And before you take off, I do want to make sure that you have marked your calendars for the megacast on Thursday. That's this Thursday, June 8th. We're going to start at noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific. So midday for you East Coasters and a nice early morning for you Pacificers. We're going to be talking about preventing and recovering from ransomware before it's too late. Bum, bum, bum. So come join us for that conversation. Don't wait until it's too late to register. Sign up right now, preventing and recovering from ransomware before it's too late. I hope that I get to see you all there. And until then, I hope you have an absolutely wonderful rest of your day.